freedom
for freedom fight again in your lobby of Wasa.
One of freedom
For freedom fight again in your lobby of Baba.
One of freedom
For freedom fight again in your people of TV.
Yes, we bring down the music so that we go to our first program of our first topic. As you may know, there is still some infighting at the Independent National Human Rights Commission office, where the head of that institution, Dempster Brown, has seized the salaries of other commissioners, Famula, Nevada, PV, and the rest of it. And so they've taken that case to the Supreme Court, and we have, the justice in chambers. They call that justice in chambers. I don't know. Yeah, maybe sorry. I'm carefully choosing my words so that I don't. Yeah, the people they don't waste time. They to put behind people in jail. So Fabien is here. Fabien is my co-host of the program. Fabien is here to talk about it. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so kindly, Hassan. Thanks for having me.
And then we
on the program.
also have the Assistant Minister. Nyemplu is on the line. Let me see which microphone he's using, but let me just pull back. Good morning, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Hassan, and good morning, Fabien.
Good morning, Minister.
Okay.
So, good morning to the rest of the country.
Oh, sure. Good. So today we are going to be focusing on various topics, and let me just acquaint you with some of the topics. The Methodist Church gay issue, the Salala rubber plantation issue, where the minister went and said we shouldn't be promoting, of course, violence. There should be no reason for violence, regardless of what. Then we're going to be talking about the yellow machines are in town or are coming in batches, so they're coming in town. No, that's something that I know you would like to run your mouth on that. And then the health literacy issue, of course, that's something dearest to my heart. Doctors, nurses are contributing to why people still go back to the hospitals because of lack of health literacy. And I will explain that, of course. And I want doctors to call when I get to that topic. And I want a doctor to challenge me on this topic, health literacy, that they are sometimes responsible for making people to come back, and people are not going, they're not following their health regimen or their health treatment. So now today, the first story we're going to pick up here is the issue with Councillor Dempster Brown. Councillor Dempster Brown, his people have complained that he's withholding their checks because they say that they are doing things outside of their scope of work. And fill us in with that development. Now the Supreme Court have placed a stay order on it because they filed a writ of prohibition. So Supreme Court have reserved ruling on the issue. So fill us in. What happened?
Yes, initially at the Independent National Commission of Human Rights, where Councillor Dempster Brown is the chairman, there have been some in-house wrangling amongst commissioners and the boss, Councillor Brown. And so they have been going back and forth on this issue. But of recent, they filed the four commissioners, Mohammed Famula, Nevada, Riggs, Onuha, Pindaros, Allison, and Patmelia to Pave. Yeah. They went and filed a writ of prohibition before the justice in chambers. And at the Supreme Court, while the court is in session, usually there must be a justice in chambers to look at other documents or other cases coming before it reaches to the full bench if there's no settlement. And so they filed it on grounds that the boss, Councillor Dempster Brown, withheld their salaries for the month of June. And prior to that, he wrote a letter that we also have in our possession, alleging that besides doing the work of the commission, they are also doing things outside of the box.
What are some of those things?
Like he alleged that Pindaros is teaching at the law school and the other commissioners are involved with other things. And he also alleged that Councillor Nevada Riggs left for almost like 5 months and travel. And she wasn't working, and he said that was even possible to have her check being rolling because she wasn't on ground.
But let me ask you, isn't teaching part of sharing knowledge that you have to hold someone responsible?
It is, but probably it's part of the TOR because, every institution has the TOR, and so sometimes you have to abide by the TOR. And so he mentioned that in that communication. And so it was based on that the commissioners who filed the writ of prohibition before the justice in chambers went and filed it to the justice in chambers. And so there was a conference yesterday called. and that conference was called, and then Justice Kaba issued the alternative rate, asking him to pull hold on that. But then within that communication, he also instructed the clerk to allow Councillor Brown to file his response on or before July 10, before 4 p.m. So there what it is. So we're going to see what's going to happen if he file his response to the claims, because it was a 7-count petition the commissioners raised. And so when he filed his response, and so they're going to hear that case, because once the alternative rate has been issued, it's going to go before the bench. And so this is something that will be in open court for people to hear what arguments will be heard. And so, as I said earlier, the issue about the commission, there has been eternal wrangling. And I mean, it's still going on amongst the commissioners and about Councillor Dempster Brown.
So if Councillor Brown files the returns, or
he responds, yeah, he returns, yeah.
Okay. I'm not.
It's the same, yeah, returns a response, yes.
Yeah, please. I mean, I love the education. Okay, files his response or returns. That's a legal jargon. File his response or returns. What do you think he will be saying? I mean, I don't want you to play psychic on him, but maybe we could preempt what he will be saying, and how what's the effect and what bearing would that have on the Supreme Court decision?
Well, his response is basically his answers to the counts that the commissioners earlier filed, because they had 7 counts that they earlier filed, and so he's going to respond to those counts where they allege, and he also accused them. And so based on his response before the justice in chambers, he's going to review that and see as to whether it correlates with what the commissioners allege against him. And so, as I said, once the alternative rate has been issued, that means the full bench are going to listen to that hearing concerning the text. But all in all, yesterday, prohibition just meant for Dempster Brown to put hold on whatever he decided to do by holding onto the checks until they can go into the matter. So we're going to see what's going to play, because normally, Hassan, we don't speak for the court. And so we don't even preempt for the court. So we have to be very careful and wait. Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah.
But the thing is that Dempster Brown, the government tried to intervene to see how they can resolve the issue by sending the legal counsel, the President Bwaka's legal counsel to go and look into the issue. Dempster Brown said, "Don't put your mouth here, because we are independent and we are supposed to be resolving our problems ourselves."
Yeah.
But then he is not willing to listen to them, allegedly, and then they are not going to take issue lying down, where he'll be bossing them around, holding their checks and issuing other stuff. So how is it possible that he would have solved the problem internally when there are 2 various wavelengths?
At the level of the Supreme Court, to where the matter has reached, there's going to be a solution there.
Of course.
Yes, because once the court decides on matter, I mean, it's final. And so if you decide to take it maybe any other place, probably it's going to be maybe ECOWAS court, but I don't think that would be necessary, because once a court decides and have a say and runs a decision, that's an opinion, it becomes law. So the court going to find solution to other internal wrangling between Councillor Brown and his commissioners at the institution there. So we are waiting to see what's going to happen when it's being before the full bench to hear whatever.
I don't know what your information is like, but are these people still working, or if they are not working, how does that affect their work at the Independent Human Rights Commission?
Well, it borders on human rights, and so you expect them to always be at work. Yeah. But in that communication that I mentioned earlier, Councillor Brown mentioned that they weren't even going to work. He mentioned that they weren't even going to work, and so he said, "How can you be with an institution not going to work and expect to get pay?" That was one of the issues he allegedly raised. And so they are saying, no, they've been going to work, because earlier, you remember, they had this commotion where he had to lock the office or conference room there. Yeah. And so they had to file another paper. And so this is something that continues to deepen within the commission. And so once the commission is bordered around human rights, a lot of people will have a different notion or say about that. So the only thing is that the level he has reached is better for the court to decide. And so that matter can be laid to rest. I'm sure there will be a solution.
Another issue, legal issue, which we haven't found solution to, is the asset recovery issue. I mean, that is something is becoming a pain in the rear end. The president formed set up a task force or the asset recovery team, and of course, during the early time of the asset recovery, of course, they started seizing properties that are deemed suspected, and one of those was the properties belonging to Finabondo, former chief of protocol officer, at the executive mansion. Those 42 or 43 taxis called Gracious something?
Gracious Rise.
Gracious Rise, yeah. And it went to the court, and the courts put a stay order on it. Now, there were arguments yesterday, I understand.
Yeah.
Fill us in. How did it go?
Yeah, there were arguments yesterday. Yesterday, there were 5 cases, but the last case concerning asset recovery and Gracious Rise was the last, and so a lot of people stayed to listen to that matter. And so when the case was called for hearing, lawyers representing both sides appeared. The lead lawyer representing Gracious Rise was Councillor Wilkins Wright. Remember, he was a former associate justice. Yeah. And so normally when you appear before the court for argument, you are given time and to put forth your issue, and not a very long time, probably for a few minutes or so, all depends on your argument with your team. And so there were 3 key issues he raised yesterday. The first thing he said that they are not challenging Executive Order 126 by the president. The Constitution gives him the right, but it was wrongfully executed. Those were his exact words. Because he is saying that you cannot have LACC that was already promulgated by the legislature, and then you have assets recovery doing the same thing and maybe similar to that of GSA.
So duplication.
So you can have LACC doing exactly what assets recovery is doing, and so he sees that as being wrongfully executed by the president. They are not, he said it openly in court, they are not challenging the president's order because he has the right according to the Constitution. But then Councillor Wilkins Wright had 3 main issues that he raised before the court. The first issue he raised was that people challenged their standing, meaning whether they had right to do that. And he said they had right to do whatever they did because it was Gracious Rise, who's the petitioner that brought assets recovery to court for seizing the vehicles. First of all, he said it had an effect on them. The fact of the matter that the vehicles were in the traffic and then they were impounded. They did not run. They did not have no financial income for that day, and so it affected them greatly. Okay. And the second thing he raised was that whether or not the president has the power or the authority to delegate authority. And so he said in that case, he said no. And he came back to the issue of LACC.
But if he agreed that the president has a right to set up anything because it's within the Constitution, why is he then saying if the president has the right to delegate responsibility?
It was a similar question that Justice Basic posed to Councillor Wright and said, if he agreed that the president has the right according to the Constitution, so why are you challenging? He said, no, I'm not challenging that. But what I'm saying is that it was wrongfully executed. And he maintained that all through his arguments. And so when the government lawyers came, the chairman of the Assets Recovery Team, Councillor Edwin Clamati, he himself represented himself, and he was the first person to speak on behalf of his institution. And he said Gracious Rise had no standing to challenge anything because they did not show any part of the Constitution, or they did not show any act that they claim that the president violated. But they equally so agree that he has the right.
He has the right to enforce the asset recovery.
Yeah, he has the right. Yeah, it was government's argument that the proffer, especially for the asset recovery chairman, Councillor Martin. I was there yesterday, and so his team of lawyers were also there. They reason with him because obviously, they won't go against each other because all of them, will come with the same plan. And he said, of course, the president has the right, and so Gracious Rise don't have standing. But there was something Martin said yesterday in court that when they are seizing those things, they are suspicious assets. It was a word that he used yesterday, suspicious asset. In fact, he said it wasn't asset recovery that impounded those vehicles, but rather it was the police. That's what he said in court yesterday. And so that argument went for some time, and the Supreme Court suspended the matter ruling was reserved. And so normally when rulings are being reserved at the court, it takes like 14 days. So the court will resume on the 16th, and probably we're going to hear whether they're going to come down without ruling or not. But remember, the same day on the 16th is the argument in a case involving former Chief Justice Gloria Scott, because they took an appeal
To the Supreme Court.
yeah, they took an appeal from the lower court to the Supreme Court. So on the 16th, we're going to hear the argument. Both teams going to proffer as to whether she will be released or maybe she will be detained. So the Supreme Court validates that because they have the final say, and once they rule, it's going to be the final. So we'll wait to see based on the argument on July 16th.
So, but let's go back to the asset recovery thing, because they are saying that, of course, is a duplication of function. Why should you have the LACC? Why should you have the LACC, who is charged with the responsibility of going after people who are suspected of having, stolen money or something of that sort? And then you have the GSA, the General Services Agency, trying to retrieve, hidden or stolen assets such as cars or so on. And why is the asset recovery doing that? I think, don't you think they have different scope? Maybe they may have some thin lines, but maybe Councillor Martin needed to go further, maybe to state maybe the reason why that was set up, and the fact that Wakelin's right to admit that the president has the right to set up that. I don't think there should be any question to say the president has the implementation.
But again, he came in with the word wrongfully executed. Lawyers are a crafted set of people, and they do things to convince the adversary group. So when there's argument, they say words either to weaken the adversary group or to convince the court. But for the fact that he agreed that the president has the right according to the Constitution and quoted part of the Constitution that gives the president the right, and then came back and saying it was wrongly executed, that's two different things. And so for that phrase, wrongly executed or wrongly used.
But I'm confused. If you say wrongly executed, did he say exactly how wrong did they execute that? Or was it wrong for parking them? Or they should have written Finabondo and say, hey, look at me, we suspect that these vehicles are illegally acquired, so bring your paperwork and you keep driving until we can investigate that, or they should have done that.
According to Councillor Wright, the vehicles were not unlawfully acquired. Okay. They have papers to that effect.
Well,
and besides that, it's a company, and so they brought other documents to show that they actually were in good standing before the court, because initially when they went to the court and filed this writ of prohibition and went to the justice in chambers, there was a conference. And so because they could not find a solution, that's how it went to the full bench. Normally that's how it's done, because once a conference is being called, in any case, the issue of a conference is to narrow down issues.
Yeah, to see if we can
and
find
so common grounds. And so once those issues are not narrowed down, definitely you're going to go for full litigation before the court. But then again, Councillor Wakelin's right said they were affected. They were really affected, and so that brought a complete loss for the company for the time the vehicles were impounded. And so he was saying that if the legislature promulgated that law, the same legislature should be the one to do that, and that asset recovery coming to do what they based on Executive Order 126 that he maintained that he wasn't challenging. And over he said he cannot challenge the president's order, but that phrase wrongfully executed or wrongful power, he kept using that. So the court going to interpret that phrase for us when we come back to see what they're going to say in the final ruling. Yeah, because they are there to interpret the law.
Nobody does it best than Fabienne Kuya, man. Fabienne is right here in the studio. That's what I like with this lady. She religiously covers the court, and she carefully picks out her words. She doesn't want to be held in contempt.
I know.
Man, those people, when they say go to jail, man,
they mean it.
They mean it. You'll go to jail. You will spend the night in jail.
Like I shared a story with you people when they let Johnny Lewis was Chief Justice. He had serious issue with journalists that always misspelled his name.
Oh yes.
That always misspelled his name, and most time he used to summon them. Of course, yes, he used to summon them for misspelling his name and remind them that you people are assigned there every day. You should know. But then again, I remember there was a story about Front Page and New Dawn that wrote some story about Judge Usman Fekai that the judge said wasn't true. In fact, they misquoted. And so he held them in contempt. He held them in contempt.
So when people are held in contempt, maybe break it down. People are held in contempt. Do they go to jail or you pay fine?
It's the power of the judge. Yes, sometimes you go to jail or you pay fine. So if your lawyer decides to ask for forgiveness in law, that's what they call purge.
Okay.
Then the judge will purge the contempt. But in some cases, sir, you definitely got to go to jail. We had a story rolling this week about ICA. It was last week. One of the officials there, they were held in contempt because they had a case before the traffic court. And for every time the court officers go out there to arrest them, either they will be in hiding also from the insurance company in Cinco. So the court officers went unknown to them. It was last week, Wednesday or Thursday, and met only one of the officials, and they brought him there at the traffic court for contempt. And there was nothing the court could do for disrespecting the court. And so they sent him to jail, handcuffed, and he went to jail, and the next day they released him.
Yeah,
so that's the power of the court and the judge. So anybody that is being held in contempt that knows the gravity will either respond quickly, because if you do dodge that, obviously you have yourself maybe going to spend a night or two at One River Central Prison. That's obvious.
No begging, say you can say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so probably if you want to beg, you can go through your lawyers and that.
But why don't you do it yourself? Or is
you got a lawyer or team of lawyers speaking for you, and so they represent you in court. So if they have to go through that, and talk to the judge, and then the judge will find a way out to purge. I'm using a legal term now, to purge the contempt.
Fabian, why don't we sit down and we come up with a legal program here for legal, So
we had that running for the past management, and I still have the slots.
Yes, please.
I still have the slots, and we have to run the slot both on radio and television.
Yeah,
I still have the slot.
Let's have a sit down and discuss it, because plenty of legal issues that we need to talk about, some jargon, there are certain words that you can escape. Even though, I'm a communication person, we need to use certain words or break down certain words, but certain jargons in the legal realm, you just have to use them. What do they mean? And why are people, Liberians, everything, I leave my own to God. Why should we go to the lawyer? What's the importance of that and all that kind of stuff? So, we need to have that program. Come, let's have some sit down. We're already in the same building, so the old building. My boss Fangong said the Hassan building. So I'm in trouble now. You listen to the Super Morning Show. This is the Media Roundtable segment. Of course, we just got through with the other side of it. Let's get a little bar of music, and when we come back, we'll talk about the local government thing and what the president just spoke about yesterday. Emmanuel Wenyu has come here in the studio. I've been calling him since 6:30. He just showed up. I'm telling the people how late you are.